Sometimes they can wound you deeply like a knife to the heart. But sometimes somebody's words can perplex you and stay with you like a burr in the mind. I remember I was very new to the job, and as a result very nervous about it. Aside from driving wheat trucks in Western New South Wales, I think this had been the most difficult job I have ever been asked to do. Visiting patients who were waiting for surgery. I was a chaplain. Some of those surgeries were relatively minor. Some of them were, well, a lot more significant. As I looked down the list on this particular evening, I saw the name of a lady whom I didn't recognise, aged 40, Roman Catholic, waiting for radical mastectomy. To say that the visit was an awkward one was an understatement. I mean, after all, what woman wants to confide in a nervous male chaplain how she's feeling about losing her breath? And eventually it became so awkward and so uncomfortable that I tried to terminate the visit by saying, do you believe in prayer? Her words have stayed with me. Not in any way that makes a difference. This lady was religious, Roman Catholic. She did what religious people do. They pray, they bookend their meetings with prayer. They offer prayer as a ceremonial compliment on all sorts of occasions. They have quick prayers as they're parking their car and all sorts of things. Prayer is the religious, the Christian thing to do. But do we know how to pray so as to make a difference? And so my theme this morning is learning the language of prevailing prayer. Prevailing prayer is the old word that Christians used to use for prayer that actually works, that overcomes the obstacles, the inward obstacles, the outward obstacles. It prevails, it receives an answer. And I want this morning to look at a Bible passage which will teach us the language of prevailing prayer. And I wonder if you'd like to turn with me in your Bible to a passage we have looked at before, but I want to look at it from a slightly different angle this morning. It's found in Genesis chapter 32. Genesis 32. You turn in your Bible with me to it. Genesis chapter 32. Here we have what I consider to be a model prayer. A prayer which can teach us principles of prevailing prayer. Exodus chapter 32, beginning in verse 9. It says, "Then Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, the Lord who said to me, return to your country and to your family, and I will deal well with you. Oh God, I am not worthy of the least of all the mercies and of all the truth which you have shown to your servant. For I crossed over this Jordan with my staff, and now I have become too comfortless. O Lord, deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he come and attack me and the mother with the children. For you have said, surely I will treat you well, and I will make your descendants as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude." Jacob's desperate prayer. I'd like us to notice the setting of this prayer. Jacob is on what I call an inevitable journey. You may remember the fact that decades earlier, he has been driven from the comfort of his home by the duplicity and deceitfulness of stealing his brother's birthright. He ends out in the desert. He has a vision and a promise from God that says, one day, Jacob, I will take you back. He spent decades with his father-in-law, Laban, and now finally he's been able to release himself from it. And he's on his way back home, back to face the past. In the Bible, it describes the way that when Jacob left home, he left with the fury of his brother Esau breathing down his neck. Esau was so angry with his brother that he was ready to kill him. And now here is Jacob saying, I have to go back, I have to face my brother again. With that in mind, he thinks, what can I do? He ends up in what's called the mountains of Gilead. I was there just last year, or the beginning of this year. The mountains of Gilead are very steep. There are very deep valleys. And here he finds himself in the middle of the mountains of Gilead, wondering how he's going to confront his brother. And in verse 3 it says, Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother in the land of Seir, the country of Edom. And he commanded them, saying, Speak thus to my lord Esau. Thus your servant Jacob says, I have dwelt with Laban and stayed there until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, and male and female servants, and I've said to them, Tell my lord that he may find, and I've sent them to tell my lord that I may find favour in your sight. But the messengers came back, and I'd like you to notice what they said in verse 6. The messengers returned to Jacob and said, We came to your brother Esau, and he also is coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him. Suddenly the past is all before him. All he could remember was the fury of his brother cheated of the birthright. And now he's going to meet him again, and he hears that brother is coming not by himself, but with 400 men. It's amazing, isn't it? How a guilty conscience can conjure up a very dark picture of the possibilities. And he is sure that Esau is coming to kill him. And that drives him to what is one of the most desperate prayers of the whole Bible. And the essence of that prayer, as we notice, the very heart of that prayer in verse 11 says, Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear. It's a desperate prayer, a desperate petition. I want you to notice that the heart of this prayer, in fact, is petition. It's him saying, Lord, please help me. I was reading just recently that the heart of all true prayer is a petition. Remember Paul says in one occasion, don't be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, make your requests known to God. Petition, you see, is at the heart of prayer. I notice that this petition is a very frank and direct one. It's a model prayer in that. And that's it. He says exactly what he means. It troubles me sometimes that out of my own mouth and out of the mouth of other people in prayer meetings, I hear prayers that are nice and they're well articulated, but it seems to me that they don't say exactly what they mean, exactly what they mean, exactly honestly what they're feeling. And this prayer was a godly prayer and a prayer that received results because it was clear and precise about what it asked. But I want you to notice, dear friends, that this petition was in the context or in the setting of worship. In other words, he didn't simply get down by his bed and say, "Oh God, please save me, please save me, I'm so scared," as we are so often inclined to do. He said that prayer in the context of being very conscious who he was talking to. Did you notice that? He begins in the first two verses by saying, "O God of my father Abraham, and the God of my father Isaac, the Lord who said to me, return." He's reminding himself in his prayer of the God he's talking to. Lord God, you are the God who made a covenant with my with my grandfather Abraham. You made a covenant with my father, and you've spoken to me. I would suggest that for our prayers to be effective, they should always take the time to be sure we know who we are talking to. In other words, discipline yourself to focus on God in prayer. I also notice that having focused on who he was speaking to, he then said, "Thou hast said." For you, in verse, he asked in verse 11, "Deliver me," but in verse 12 he says, "Because you have said, I will surely treat you well." Here's the second thing that will guarantee answers to prayer. Not only am I focusing on the God who is, the God who saves me, and remembering what God's power and what his love is. I'm not only focusing on that, I'm also reminding myself that that God has spoken in his Bible. That these promises are his literal word to me. And then with that settled conviction, I then say to God, Lord God, in this Bible, you have said. I think there are some lessons that we could learn from this critical prayer of Jacob. First of all, prevailing prayer looks for and then clings to a specific promise. If we are serious about prayer, if we are serious about really having God answer, it will often drive us to our knees by ourselves in our bedroom with an open Bible, with us turning the pages, anxiously looking for that verse, that passage that speaks directly to my situation. Well, you say, Pastor, there's lots of promises. But when you're in crisis, when you must have an answer to prayer, when you must know that you are speaking to God, you are looking for the promise which resonates in your soul, in which says, that's my situation, that's what I need. And then believing that those words are not simply words on a page, spoken 2,000 years ago. They are spoken to you as if God were speaking at that moment. Prevailing prayer clings to the promise. But secondly, I notice that prevailing prayer confines itself to God's promises. What do I mean by that? I mean, dear friends, that we are to be very sure that what we are asking for is something that God has specifically promised. And when we do that, it gives us a great confidence that what we have prayed is what we will receive. I wonder if you would remind yourself with me of that lovely, lovely Bible verse in 1 John chapter 4. 1 John chapter 4 that speaks of confidence in prayer. 1 John chapter 4, or chapter 5, I'm sorry, and verse 14. It reads this way: "Now, says the apostle, this is the confidence that we have in him, that if we ask anything according to his will," read, anything that he has clearly promised, anything according to his will. If we ask anything according to his will, he hears us. And it says, if we know he hears us, whatever we ask, we know we have the petitions we have asked of him. Think about that, my dear Christian friend. Here is a confidence that God gives to us in prayer. That if I am sure, because I read it here, that God has said that, and I ask him for that, I can be sure that not only he hears that, what he hears, he will do. Here's a confidence in answered prayer, in getting what we answer, that is often missing in much of our modern church life. Can I also notice with you that when we confine ourselves to prayer for what God has promised, we are also placing a safeguard around our own crazy selves. Imagine how dangerous it would be if God promised that whatever you want, I will give you. Is that what wisely says in Steps to Christ? We are often so foolish and erring. She describes herself there. We, Christians, sometimes mature Christians, we are often so foolish and ignorant that we sometimes ask for things which would not be for our best good. And our Heavenly Father, in love, gives us that which we would ask for ourselves, could we see the end from the beginning. So to confine yourself, you see, to what God has specifically promised is not only making you confident, but it's keeping you safe from your own foolishness. Now, I am aware there are many Christians who would be quite offended by what I've just said. They would say, Pastor, that view of prayer being confined to the promises of the specific promises of what God actually has said he will do, that is a much too narrow and restrictive view of prayer. And they would remind me that Jesus came to give us a much wider birthright than that. That he would say, for example, in John chapter 14 and verse 13 and 14, if you just turn there for a moment with me. John chapter 14, verse 13 and 14. He would give what seems to be an unlimited warranty to prayer. Chapter 13 and 14, beginning in verse 12. Jesus said there, most assuredly I say to you, he who believes in me, the works that I do, he will do also, and greater works than these he will do, because I go to my Father. And whatever you ask in my name, that I will do, that the Father may be glorified in the Son. If you ask anything in my name, I will do it. He goes on in chapter 15 and verse 5 to say, I am the vine and you are the branches. He who abides in me and I in him, verse 7 I'm looking for. If you abide in me and my words abide in you, you will ask whatever you desire and it should be done. And there are many Christians who say that the birthright of the Christian is to ask what he wants, what he can see he longs for. The only limit, they say, to answers to prayer is your imagination and your faith. In fact, the most striking example of this teaching of Jesus is found in Mark chapter 11. Mark chapter 11. And here is surely, and I would have you read this with me. Notice what Jesus says here. Because of all the places that Jesus talks about answered prayer and how to obtain it, this is the clearest and the most striking. Mark 11. Have a look at it with me. Jesus said in verse 22, have faith in God, for assuredly I say to you, whoever says to this mountain, be removed and be cast into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that those things that he says will be done, he will have whatever he says. And when you think about that, folks, that is stupendous, is it not? Whatever mountain, cast it into the sea. Believe in your heart and don't doubt, and you will have what you say. I was just last year conducting a little home Bible study with a group of Ghanaian immigrants, part of my work with the Ghanaian church. And each week it seemed we would have more of these friends, Ghanaian friends, come in to take part in the Bible studies. We had 3 or 4 of them there. I was very satisfied. Those Ghanaians drank it in. Hundreds. One of them was obviously a bit disturbed. He too was going to church, a Sunday church, a charismatic church, a Ghanaian church, a church that taught that poverty was unnecessary, nay wrong. That sickness was unnecessary, nay wrong. And this man was a poor man. This man was not a well man. And he was being taught that the only reason that you remain poor is because you have insufficient faith to believe that God will make you rich. The only reason that you are sick is because you have insufficient faith to believe that God will remove the mountain of your sickness and make you well. But that is what it says, isn't it? Read very carefully with me this verse, folks. This verse, read carefully, does not say that. And here I would put in a plea for careful Bible reading. Being very careful that we know exactly what is meant. Sometimes we need to go, bless my soul, back to the original language. But what does this say? Read it with me. Surely, verse Jesus said, I say unto you, whoever says to this mountain, be removed and cast into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that those things that he says will be done, he will have whatever he says. Now that sounds, does it not, as though if you say to the mountain, get lost, that the mountain, if you believe in your heart, has got to get lost, right? When you look more carefully, that's not what it says. Whoever says to this mountain, that word says there is a different word from the word that Jesus uses when he says, but he who believes those things that he says will be done. In other words, I wish I had a blackboard at this point to be able to point this out to you. But what when Jesus says, but believes in his heart that those things that he says will be done. He's not referring to the person who's making the prayer, but to God himself. What does God say will be done? Get the idea? So let me read it again. Whoever says to this mountain, whoever person says to this mountain, be removed and cast into the sea, and doesn't doubt in his heart, but believes that those things that God says will be done, he will have what God says. This is saying, you see, that our prayers must be confined to what God has said, not simply to what I believe I'd like to have. Did God actually promise that he would remove this mountain? Show me where. Now I can think of plenty of mountains that God has in fact promised to remove. And one of those surely is our sins. Cannot our sins be a huge mountain in our consciousness sometimes? Our past failures, our foolishnesses, a huge mountain. And God has said, as we sang in that song this morning, my sin, not in part but the whole, has been what? Nailed to his cross. I bear it no more. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord for my soul. There's a mountain which he says will be removed, and if you believe that he has said that, believe that he said that to you, then it is actually so. Just to confirm, and I am speaking vigorously out of a search that I made my own. I struggled with this verse, I have to say, until I realised what Jesus was actually saying. And to confirm that he means that, let me read you from Education, the book Education, the book by Ellen White, where she writes this. She says, Jesus says that our asking must be in accordance with God's will. We must ask for the things he has promised. And she quotes that in the context of quoting the verse that we just read, whatsoever things you desire when you pray, believe that you receive it and you will have it. So the conclusion of that, my dear friends, is that New Testament faith, genuine New Testament faith, is not like the faith that you will find in the health and wealth gospel. The faith that sounds so good, that will offer you whatever you want if you will only believe it. It isn't that at all. New Testament faith pleads the promises of God and nothing else. So then, having asked according to the will of God, what then do I do to make sure that I receive what I asked for? Let's come back to Genesis chapter 32 again. Genesis 32. It's marked in my Bible. I hope you can fit as quickly and easily as I did. Genesis chapter 32. Read this prayer again. Deliver me, I pray you, in verse 11, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, lest he come and attack me and mother with the children. For you have said, surely I will treat you well, and make your descendants as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. What's the next word? So. So what did he do? Having poured out his heart in prayer to God like that, Lord, please save me because you promised you would. What happens next? I'll tell you some things that could have happened. He could have got up from his knees, walked back to his tent, and suddenly been filled with memories of those 400 men walking through the mountains to come and get him. He could have said, I'm going to answer my own prayer. I'm going to deliver myself by running away and getting out into those mountains. He could have done that, couldn't he? What does it say he did? It says in verse 13, so he lodged there that same night. That suggests to me, my dear friends, that there's something about his prayer, something about the earnestness and the sincerity of his prayer that night that convinced him that God had heard, that he was safe, that he could in fact stay where he was. Faith is what we must do. Having asked, Jesus says, you must then believe. Read it with me again. Mark chapter 11. Mark chapter 11. Maybe you've got that marked in my own. Mark chapter 11. For in verse 24, the next verse, Jesus says, therefore I say to you, in view of what I've just been telling you, that whatever you ask, if you believe that if you believe those things that he says will be done, you will have whatever he says. Therefore he says, I say to you, whatever things you ask when you pray, believe that you receive them and you will have them. Notice this carefully. Jesus is saying that having asked for what God has promised, my next step is to believe what? When I see it happen? No. Does he say, you can believe that you will receive? What does that? No. He actually says, believe that you received. Past tense. Now you say past tense, it's not in there. I've had the privilege of looking at the original language. It is there. That word that you received is actually in the past tense. And what it literally says, what Jesus literally means is this: believe that you have already received. Wow. Wow. Ellen White makes a very interesting comment about this. Page 257 of Book Education, she says this: we may ask for any gift that he has promised, and then we are to believe and return that we receive and return thanks that we have received. And then we may go about our work assured that the gift which we already possess will be realized when we need it most. Did you get the phrases? Thank God that you have received it. I can't see it, I can't feel anything. Nothing's changed. It's still dark out here. My brother is still, I think, up in the mountain. You have received the gift. And you should thank God that you have received it. And then go about your duties assured that the gift which is yours, it is yours, not maybe, it is already yours, will be realized when you need it most. When I was studying this, I have to acknowledge that my jaw dropped more and more. Here is a clear description of the kind of faith that makes a difference. A faith that believes that he has received and then goes on its way, assured that the gift will be realized when I need it most. And I had to say to myself, where does that faith come from? How do I get that sort of faith? Once again, Ellen White's writing, but helpful in this Desire of Ages 200. She says it is not because we see or feel that God hears us, that we are to believe. We are rather to trust to his promises. I want you to stay with me. See what that's actually saying. Those of you who have really struggled in prayer, and I trust that that's probably been all of you at some stage, you really wanted to know that God was hearing you and that you would receive what you were asking. We'll know what it means to say in yourself, is God really hearing me? I don't feel like he is. Or, I can't, in my eyes, I can't see how God could be real, So sometimes there's this inward quest. Am I really believing this? Do I really see this? Is this really possible? And I imagine that my faith is based on some kind of inward awareness. And Ellen White is saying, no, don't do that. Not because we see or feel. Are we to believe that God is hearing us? We are to look to what? The promise. In other words, our attention must be directed not inwardly, do I believe it, but what has God promised? Can I just give a little personal testimony? I'm a very inward person, as you probably know. I tend to want to know that something's happening inside. I'm learning slowly that I mustn't do that. I must keep my focus on the words of God, the things that he has actually said, and believe that is so, whether or not this is happening in here or not. Let me give you an example in the Bible of that kind of faith. It's found in Romans chapter 4. Romans chapter 4. Romans chapter 4, and here in verse 18, Paul describes the faith of Abraham. Listen to his words. Verse 19, not being weak in faith, he did not consider his own body already dead, since he was about 100 years old, or the deadness of Sarah's womb. He didn't waver at the promise of God through unbelief. In other words, Paul is here saying what Ellen White has said. He didn't look inside his own circumstances. Is there any evidence, any possibility in myself or in my circumstances that this could happen? No, he doesn't do that. He doesn't waver at the promise of God, because in verse 21 it says he is fully convinced that what he has promised, who's he? God. Fully convinced that what he has promised, he is also able to perform. And my mind immediately goes back to the story of Abraham that is being referred to. Genesis 15, we won't turn to it right now. That's the story of Abraham being full of doubts and saying to God, but God, nothing's happening the way you said it would happen. You promised me a son, there's no son. There's only enemies out there. You know what God does to him? He says, Abraham, you need to get outside your tent. You're stuck in the four walls of your tent. You can't see any bigger than your own life. You need to get outside. You need to look up into the stars. You need to get a glimpse of that majestic panoply of stars up there. Now, I suspect that there was a panoply in Palestine at that time. You know, if you go outside now, you see many of them. I don't see very many of them. If you go out west, you'll see a panoply of stars. And there is nothing like that view to give you a sense of the awesome majesty of the God that you're speaking to. And I believe that there was a great pause in that verse 15 in Genesis chapter 15 and verse 6. Come and look outside. And I think God left him there for a long time. Until Abraham got this sense of who he was speaking to. And can I challenge you, my dear Christian friends, do not expect your prayers to be answered. Do not expect your prayers to prevail. If they are prayers that are so encompassed by the four walls of your house, so encompassed by the television screen you may be watching, that you have no sense of the awesome power of the God who made the promise. Paul says he was fully convinced, because he looked at the stars, that what he had promised he was able also to perform. And in the context of standing under the stars that night, Abraham hears a clear voice saying something to him. You and I can have a clear sense of God saying something to us. Today, it is mediated through His Word. You can open this Bible. You can turn to a promise. You can have a sense that there is someone speaking to you. And if you have a conviction that that someone speaking is also the one who spoke worlds into existence, you can also believe in the impossible, can you not? This, and this alone, is the faith that provides and receives answers. And White talks about the fact that this is a lesson that we need to learn. When we have learned this lesson, she says, then we will know our prayers are answered. In other words, folks, it's a journey. The teacher, the prophet, the mentor of our church knew us very well. Knew that we struggled with weak faith. That our faith was often a mixture of fear and faith, as Jacob's was. I fear, ask my brother, I'm also believing. But if you persist, can I finish with a story? It's a story from my favourite person, and Don was going to smile and going to say, there he goes again. But my favourite person, as you know, is Hudson Taylor, the missionary to China. And when he was converted as a young man, he had a prayer story to tell. I told you before that Hudson Taylor was a young man who was brought up in the church and who was doing everything right, and then he began to get wrong friends, mixing the wrong company. And his mother could see him drifting away. She begins to feel desperate. He's 16, this boy is getting less and less godly. Where was that boy that was so full of faith when he went to Sunday school as a little boy? She's away at some friend's place. She has some space after dinner to be on her own. She feels the urgency of needing to pray, of must having an answer for her son who's going away so far. And Hudson Taylor records the fact that his mum went upstairs and closed her door. And for hours wrestled with God in prayer. Until finally she felt assured that what she had asked for had already been received. I often ask myself, what do these people do praying for that? Did she just keep on saying, Lord, please save my son for 3 hours? Is that what happened? Or did she spend those hours wrestling to get such a view of the power of God, of the love of God, that she knew who she was talking to? Did she spend those hours anxiously searching the scriptures for that promise, that right promise, which spoke to her situation, and then was able to claim, Father, you have said. Join me, folks, won't you, learning the language